As we come into today's event, I'm reminded of one of my favorite scriptures, Isaiah 1 and 18. Come now and let us reason together. Come now and let us reason together. In that spirit, I hope we can have an open and respectful dialogue where we can listen to one another and work towards solutions that serve our community and our state. Thank you for being here, and thank you in advance for listening and respecting your neighbor, even if you may disagree. So you all got a ticket. Can you pull that ticket out? Hold it up. You all got a ticket. Hold your ticket out. So I will be pulling a series of tickets randomly. If you hear your ticket number called, please come up to one of the staffers in the aisle. Raise your hand. The staffers are in the aisle. Come up to one of them to ask your question. If you are unable to move out of your seat, the staffers, let the staffer know, and they'll come over and put the mic, bring you the microphone. Please limit your speaking time to 60 seconds. 60 seconds. There are a lot of people in the room. Now, if you go over the 60-second mark, then you'll hear my voice next. All right? 60 seconds. Let's be respectful. Now, if we don't get to your question, because there's a lot of people in this room, if we don't get to your question tonight, we have a lot of staff here that will be in the hallway until the very last person leaves. We have case workers here. We have our policy team here. We have our outreach team here. So there's a lot of staff that can get to your question if you don't hear your number called in here tonight. Please do not scream out to ask your question. We're going to be respectful. We're going to do things in decency and in order. All right, so let's get into it. Also, one last thing, if you require an accommodation due to a disability, please notify one of our staff members now, and we'll be happy to assist you. And if you can't move out of your seat, our staffers will come over and bring you the microphone. So we're going to get started. Is someone here to help me? All right. I'm going to pull the first three numbers, and you can come on to the microphone. Thank you. Number 429, 1600, 455. Again, that's 429, 1600, 455. Brenda, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Newsom. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great. So with this administration's efforts to centralize power and to diminish checks and balances, how are you upholding, along with your fellow lawmakers, constitutional governance and to make sure that our democracy stays intact?
Thank you so much. So, thank you for that, Jasmine. That question really gets at the heart, right, of what we are facing. And what we are seeing in real time is that our democracy depends on our charter documents, the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, our laws, 3 co-equal branches of government. But what we're learning in real time is that certain norms and the sheer commitment of people to honor those norms and to stand up for them is the glue that's held our democracy together for now almost 250 years. And so you have my commitment that I will use all the powers that I have to defend our democracy. It's the reason why I've always fought for voting rights. It's the reason I've always felt like democracy is the first thing, and I was disappointed, quite honestly. In spite of all the incredible things we got done my first 2 sessions in Congress, I was fighting hard to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. and the Freedom to Vote Act, because not only do they deal with things like voter ID and issues of people having access, dark money in our politics, which has been sapping the lifeblood, siphoning the lifeblood out of our politics for years. And so you have my commitment that as a member of the Senate, I'm holding this administration accountable. I'm dragging Trump officials in front of my committees and asking the tough questions. I'm voting down legislation that I think runs roughshod over the American people and their rights. And in the moments when it's appropriate, I'm happy to join briefs where people are challenging him in court. And I don't know if you've noticed or not, he's been getting whipped in court, even by some judges that he appointed. So I am heartened by some of what I'm seeing come out of the judiciary. Honestly, I'm deeply disappointed in my Republican colleagues in the Congress. The executive is one branch of government. And we saw it even during the nominations process. We saw them just lie down and accept whoever he presented. And what I'm saying to them is that they ought to be concerned about this because, it takes a lot of work to get to be a U.S. Senator. Why would you go through all of that and then hand your power over to a wannabe autocrat? I'm not about to do it. So I'll be standing up, I'll be raising the hard questions, and I'll be talking to all of my colleagues in the Congress, not just Democrats, but Republicans. Because here's the thing, we could stop a lot of this if we could just get 4 of them. If we could just get 4 of them in the House or 4 of them in the Senate, we could get a whole lot done. And if people had done their job and voted as I did for his conviction during that impeachment, then we wouldn't be here. But that's water under the bridge. And know that I will remain vigilant in defending our Constitution. It's the covenant we have with one another.
Andrea.
Am I up? Okay. Hi, Kevin Oliver, Morehouse class of '95. Raphael, I want to say you're dressing a lot better now that you're a senator. You look good, man. You look good.
And I have a whole lot less hair.
I want to talk this terrible trade policy, man. Is there anything we can do? I mean, we're starting trade conflicts with our allies, Canada, countries that are our allies. And I just see economic destruction going on. Is there anything we can do that the Congress can do?
No, thank you so very much for the question. We are seeing very quickly the destruction that Trump's reckless tariffs policy is creating. And we say tariffs, and I know what tariffs are, and I know it's a sophisticated crowd. You know what tariffs are. But let's call it what it really is. It's a tax on ordinary people. That's what it is. It's a tax. And we need to keep calling it a tax. Because this is important, because right now they're trying to give a tax cut to billionaires while raising your taxes. Tariffs this is a tax on everything, everyday goods. So apparently, we have a president who thinks that billionaires' taxes ought to go down and yours ought to go up. And we're not surprised because he said he was going to do it, but he is being enabled by my colleagues on the Republican side. So part of what we got to do is hold them accountable. Hold them accountable. And if you're listening to me and you're in, you ought to call them. If that's your congressperson, you ought to reach out to them and let them know that you're going to hold them accountable. So I'm a new member of the Finance Committee, and I'm the ranking member on trade. So tariffs is right in my wheelhouse. So know that on my committee, I will be holding his trade representative and others accountable for this awful, reckless policy. I will be holding them accountable. Let me give you one example, and I've been talking to business people all over our state. And ironically, if you think this is a Democrat and Republican issue, I haven't found anybody other than Trump and the people around him who say yes, 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 who think this is a good idea. I'm talking to Democrats and Republicans, and I'm not talking to business people who think this is a good idea. I haven't run into them. Georgia farmers know it's a bad idea. So they need fertilizer for their goods. One of the key ingredients for fertilizer is potash. Guess where the potash comes from? Canada. And so somebody's got to pay for that. Who is that? You. Meanwhile, farmers are trying to make their businesses work. It's a tough business. The margins of profitability are narrow to begin with. There's so much you don't control, weather and other kinds of things. And he's making it hard. You remember the last time he did this, he subsidized the farmers by giving them payouts. Well, that's not good for the taxpayer. So I will keep holding them accountable and talking about this. If you say, well, I don't know if that makes a difference, it does make a difference. I'll show you one example of how it makes a difference. We kept making noise about this, and as a result of me and others calling out the administration on this, we were able to create enough pressure on our Republican colleagues that we did pass an amendment. We passed a measure out of the Senate that would stop the president's ability to put these trade barriers on Canada. So little by little, bit by bit, we keep making the case.
Next round of numbers, 189, 1273, 130. Again, 189, 1273, and 130. Andrea.
Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Tanya Spicer and thrilled to be here. So thank you so much for the town hall. I just have a question about Doge. What is it? If it's illegal, why is it still happening? I just got a text at 3:30 that he's nominated Doge to head up Social Security. What is that? If all this is illegal, why isn't everyone calling him a traitor? He just said he's unsure. He doesn't know, as president, if he's supposed to follow the Constitution. What does that mean? What are we doing? We, we can't just keep legislating it. If he's a traitor, he's a traitor. We have a constitution. To add, there's no amendments needed. What's our next step? What's our plan?
Thank you so much. So, there's no question that we've got a lawless president. And much of this is unprecedented. We have an unelected billionaire running something called DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. As you point out, he didn't go through advise and consent through the Senate, so he's not a confirmed member of the cabinet. He's not elected. He's posing as co-president. You've got this operation in which they are going through records at the Social Security Administration and other places, all under the pretense that they're going after waste. And as I've already pointed out to you, government spending actually went up this quarter as compared to this time last year. By the way, if Elon Musk wants to find some waste and fraud, I think I know where he can find some. Last I checked, he had about $38 billion worth of government contracts and subsidies. And the New York Times laid out a damning report this week about him literally sitting in the parlor, sitting in the White House, meeting with foreign entities, making demands. So part of what I'm very concerned about is, the levels of corruption that we are witnessing. This just corruption, unabashed, unembarrassed, out in the open. And we have to use all the levers that we have possible to hold him accountable. So what I will do, and all of us have different roles, what I will do in my role is when the administration's officials come before me, I will hold them accountable. I will make transparent what they're doing. Part of what's made our government strong is transparency about what's going on. And so we have to hold them accountable. We have to hold it under the light. And I think that as the people see it, something does happen. I don't like to get into punditry, but I'm feeling that folks got quite a bit of buyer's remorse already. And as that reality changes, I think it creates the context for us to carry out the change that you want to see and that I want to see. Thank you so much for your question.
Operational step towards global human rights. The United Nations has put forth 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The first of the 17 Sustainable Goals is no poverty on a timeline to 2030. But we'd like to ask on behalf of the Free African Society and the beloved community is what is our plan? Where do we go from here? Because we're apparently in chaos and we've got to get out back to community.
Thank you so much. Let me just say to you that I share your commitment to eradicating poverty. Certainly, we should not have the poverty that we see in the United States of America. 1 in 5 children in our own country is food insecure and doesn't know where their next meal is coming from. Think about that. In the wealthiest nation on the planet and in human history, 1 in 5 children is food insecure, don't know where their next meal is coming from. And so, as a member of the Agriculture Committee, and as a free lunch kid myself, I am focused on hunger, I'm focused on poverty. I look back at my life and I'm in awe of my own journey. A kid who grew up in public housing, one of 12 children in my family. I'm number 11 out of 12. Clearly my folks read the scripture, be fruitful and multiply. I'm the first college graduate in my family. I often say that I went to Morehouse on a full faith scholarship. I didn't have enough money for the first semester, but Pell Grants and low interest student loans at a time when you didn't have all these bad actors provided for me a path out of poverty. And what sickens me, and the reason why I do this work, honestly, the reason why I put up with politics is my commitment to service and the fact that I recognize that it would be harder now for me to do what I did coming out of public housing, growing up as I did in my generation in the 80s. It'd be harder for me to do that now than it was then. And so that is a terrible indictment about increasing wealth inequality in our own country, which I'm committed to addressing in a whole range of ways, including workforce development, passing the child tax credit, giving people a chance to make their lives better, while at the same time, yes, I'm concerned about global poverty. Because I don't buy the argument that some have that if we're concerned about what's happening around the globe, that somehow that takes away from us. We ought to listen to our military experts. They will tell you, as DOGE has ravaged and destroyed USAID, which is the most short-sighted thing. I'm addressing your issue around global poverty. USAID is less than 1% of the federal budget. I want you to know that because they would have you, they're just spending it's less than 1% of the federal budget. And our military experts will tell you that for every dollar you take from humanitarian aid, you got to give me $2 for bullets. So it's in our enlightened self-interest to care about global poverty even as we deal with wealth inequality here at home, and that's why I'm so proud of Georgia's role in that. There's an organization here in Georgia called MANA, and they found themselves in a situation, they deal with global poverty, hungry people, hungry children. There are these little packets called RUTF, is ready-to-use therapeutic food. It's rich in protein and nutrients. It's made out of a peanut protein powder. Guess where that peanut protein powder is made? It's made in Georgia by Georgia farmers. And MANA found themselves in the crosshairs of all of this cutting by DOGE. And so I got on the phone with Secretary Rubio, and I said, look, they've done the work. They need to be paid for the work they've already done, and you need to unfreeze some of these contracts. And I was successful in getting that done. So I will hold the administration accountable, but we need a longer vision, a broader vision for how we build what Dr. King called the beloved community. And as the pastor of Ebenezer Church, where he served, serving in the Senate, know that I remain committed to that work, and I hope we can keep this dialogue going.
All right, I'm going to call out 5 numbers. We have some people that may have changed their minds, so I'm going to do 5. 124, 225, 51, excuse me, 1437, 445, 226. I'm going to do those again. 124, 225, 51, 1437, 445, and 226. Brenda, we'll start with you.
Hi, Senator. Over here.
Hi, Brenda.
Pregnant lady. I'm Melissa
Congratulations
Page. Thank you.
and blessings on your little
Thank
one
you.
on the way.
Found out I was pregnant the Friday after the election. It's just a rough time. I want to thank you for holding this town hall. I'm so glad I wrote down a question. I know you work very hard to represent the people of Georgia and that your faith informs your practice as a senator, and I do thank you for that as a fellow believer. As you know, the Democratic Party, I've heard, is something like a 20% approval rating at the moment. Can you hear me okay? Okay. People like David Hogg have suggested primarying ineffective Democrats in order to get people in office who are better in touch with the needs and voices of voters. In your opinion, what is your vision for the Democratic Party moving forward to gain back trust? And does that vision allow for room at the table for Palestinian voices and leaders like Representative Ruhr Roman?
Thank you so much. Hi, Representative Rowan. Stand up. You don't have to slink down. We're glad to see you. So let me answer the last part of your question right off the bat. The answer is yes. I am committed to the humanity and the dignity of all people, including our Palestinian sisters and brothers and people who deal with what's going on in that region of the world. I have to tell you, yeah, I'm a Democrat, but this is what happens when you elect the preacher to office. I'm a Democrat. I don't know that I spend that much time worried about the party. I spend my time thinking about the people that we're supposed to represent. I got other folk. We got the leader of the Democratic Party here. Stand up. That's Charlie Bailey, the new head of the state Democratic Party. I'm going to let Charlie worry about the party. I really am focused on the people because I think that you have to have the people feel that you are walking with them and that you understand the concerns of ordinary people, and that work is not easy. We live in a moment right now where all of our communications even is gerrymandered. And it's not just the congressional districts, but the communication ecosystem is gerrymandered. You wonder why, how is it that we live in parallel universes? And I'll give you this much, part of what we discovered in the last election is they were talking to millions more people than we were. So I'm trying to stay focused on talking to all the people. And we need young voices in that conversation. We have to center the people. And if we center the people, we have a better chance at getting the public policy right. And I hope that you and I can stay in dialogue about this and a whole range of issues. Sometimes we ought to talk less and, spend some time listening. And so I'm listening to you. All right? Thank you.
Kristen, you can go ahead.
Good evening, Senator. My name is Sharon Crenshaw. First, I want to commend you on the work that you have done for us in the past, and I want to say thank you. I want to speak to something more about something that's going on in our backyard, and my heart is kind of in my throat. I'm the director of a small nonprofit called Building Blocks, and I also work with Black Voters Matter. We have a serious problem in Georgia to where our homeless, our mentally ill, excuse me, are going through things concerning the DCA. We've reached out, we've called, we've asked for help. People are being put out, evicted, grandparents, mothers, and they're supposed to have mental health caseworkers. I have clients who have not had them in the last 4 years, and we're asking where's the money? What are you doing? Where is the money? I've asked for accountability from the top of DCA to the bottom. I get no response. These people are being told they have 7 days to get out. And you can't evict someone legally within 7 days, but because they have mental health issues, they don't know any better. And I'm dealing with these people, and my heart is aching and crying for them now. So I'm asking you, what can you do to help these agencies help me help these people? They're coming out of homelessness. And they don't know that they can't be put out. And everybody in here, your dollars pays for this. There is something that we have, community service boards that are supposed to help these people, and they aren't getting help, sir.
Thank you so much. So at the federal level, all the things that I can do, and if there are more, I'm always looking for new things I can do to help poor people. Increasingly, we're seeing working people who are homeless. There are folks who go to work. I mean, they go every day, and they're homeless. Mental health is a big part of this. Won't reduce all of it to that, but that is a big part of it. I've got lots of legislation that I've introduced on mental health. As a member of the Banking and Housing Committee, I'm very focused on housing affordability. Housing in Georgia has its records even in the Southeast with respect to home ownership is abysmally low, and homelessness is the extreme expression of that. So I want us to keep talking. I want you to connect with a member of my team because I want to hear the specifics because you're obviously engaged in the work. You're not talking theoretically. You're talking about specific work that you're doing on the ground right now and your frustration with the bureaucracy. I hear you. I hear you. So I want a member of my team to get your information. And I want to see if there are things that I can do. Tyler's standing right behind you. He works for me, and I work for you. So I want you to give him your information. I want to hear specifically about the agencies you're talking about, the folks who are trying to get people help, and anything I can do to strengthen and bolster those efforts. You have my commitment in front of all of these people that I will do it. All right?
Brenda.
Hello, hi. My name is Kay Butler, and I am so thrilled to see this town hall in a church. And I think that we need a whole lot more of that. Hopefully, ministers can get involved in terms of coalition about where it can be in different areas of the state. My question is, how are you reaching those citizens who feel apathetic about voting? I'm particularly interested in the age group between 18 and 30 or 29, because so much education is needed to clarify misinformation that is constantly circulating. So I'm hoping that we'll see more and more of these to reach that population, not just the younger folk, but anyone who's apathetic. I just want to back off on one thing that you had mentioned earlier, and that is, I think it's a great plan to say, here is where the fraud is, and that is a direct plan, like you said, in terms of, here, let me show you where the fraud is or the cost that shouldn't be happening. I personally am stuck in terms of how I can get more involved in town halls. I'd like to know how I can specifically get involved with that.
Thank you so much. So, your vote is your voice. Your voice is your human dignity. I spent a lot of time working on voting rights, voter mobilization, and registration. Even before I came to the Senate, we register voters in my church. I tell my folk, it's a sin not to vote. Because you're giving up your voice. You're giving up your humanity, your ability to have a voice in the direction of the country and your destiny in it. So I took that same spirit to the Senate, and I want all the young people or the folks who are apathetic to hear me. I know there aren't any apathetic people here because they're here in this church on a Sunday night. But tell the folks who say, well, my vote doesn't matter. Well, if your vote doesn't matter, why are some people working so hard trying to steal it? Why are they trying to take it? If you don't know you have power, some other folk have realized it and figured it out. And I don't mean a long time ago. I mean in recent days when they passed the SAVE Act in the House. Look it up, the SAVE Act. The whole effort was to make it harder for people to vote. So they literally have provisions in that legislation where your driver's license might not be sufficient. They want to make it harder for some people to vote. So I know what I'm talking about. I don't want to spend this time talking about my campaigns, but this is illustrative of the point. After I won the first time in Georgia, my political adversaries looked at the anatomy of my victory and they came after it with surgical precision. The runoff is a vestige of the Jim Crow era, but I won in the runoff. And so it was 8 weeks, so the next time we came around, remember they passed SB 202. They cut the amount of runoff in half. And then as we were entering the runoff the last time I ran, they said that, sorry, but you can't vote on the first weekend if that weekend comes after a holiday. And that holiday was Thanksgiving and, wait for it, the birthday of Confederate General Robert E. Lee. And that's how they chose to read the law. And Georgia officials said, you know, I'm sorry, we're not trying to be difficult here. Our hands are tied. You can't vote the weekend, first weekend of the runoff after the holiday. Our hands are tied. So I decided to untie their hands. I sued them. And I won. And then the same folks who said their hands were tied showed their hands because they should have just accepted the fact that the court had just liberated them. That's not what they did. They appealed the decision. And I won. And then they appealed the decision again, asking for emergency relief. And I said to myself, emergency relief from what? From voting? People voting? So I had to win a court decision and 2 appeals just so students coming home for the Thanksgiving break, and others could vote the first weekend of the runoff. And I don't remember, my staff gets nervous when I want to make sure. We about 100,000 people, I think, voted that weekend, somewhere in that ballpark. And I won by about that margin, somewhere in that. So what I'm trying to say to you is that voter suppression is a little bit chipping a little bit here, chipping a little bit there. It's not these big things always. And shucks, I don't know how anybody could be apathetic after what we're going through right now. We say elections have consequences. That ain't a slogan right about now. We're living that reality. And here I am doing everything I can with the tools I have, but those tools are not the same as they were my first two Congresses. But I'm going to use the tools I have. Just because we're out of power doesn't mean we don't have any power. Don't ever let anybody take your power.
Brenda.
Hi, my name is Dawn Warner, and I am with the MG Holistic Society, a nonprofit organization. And my heart is really full right now because this current administration has made it impossible for nonprofits to get funding if you use certain terms that are deemed DEI. And well, I'm black, we're black, we're disabled, female, so there's some words that we can't use to apply for certain fundings. So I would ask, kind of twofold, what advice would you have for nonprofits in the same type of situation that's seeking funding? And then the other part is, as you are part of this finance department, to keep in the forefront, if you can, that there are a lot of people who rely on medications that come from overseas, that if those things are taxed, they really will not be able to afford it, and it is seriously a matter of life and death.
Yeah. So on the last thing that you just said, the issue around tariffs, Congress needs to seize its power. That is within our domain. And what you are witnessing is people who are literally giving their power away. We could stop the tariffs issue and the president's reckless way in which he's carrying out these tariffs. The Congress could stop this tomorrow. I need you to understand that so you will know who to hold accountable. We could literally stop this tomorrow if some folk would recognize that they don't work for a king, they work for the American people. We could solve it tomorrow. We could. So I just want you to know that. So don't, because I'm talking to people, and Democrats and Republicans are frustrated by this. This isn't partisanship, this is math. And the math ain't mathing. And on this, Wall Street and Main Street agree. So I'm taking the time to say that to you so you'll know who to hold accountable. Maybe you live in this blue district and I and, your congresswoman represent you, but you got friends in red districts and folks are watching me, they're from other districts. And in as much as I'm seeing that people don't like this, you need to hold your congress member accountable for this. We could stop it tomorrow. We could. I think I've answered your question. Let me say to you on this other issue about your not-for-profit. I don't want to forget and lose sight of that. My team is very effective at trying to get congressionally directed spending, earmarks. And we've walked with and worked with a number of our entities in Georgia, schools, municipalities, others, who are trying to navigate the system. And I take direct interest in trying to get some of those through. So if you're talking about specific federal funds, I want you to reach out to my office. I want one of my staff members to get her name and number, and let me see how we can help. I heard your larger point on DEI. Our country is great, not in spite of its diversity, but because of it, and we have to stand up for it. And we have to stand up for one another. I think some people were surprised to discover that they too were DEI. So we better stand up for one another. We better stand up for one another. And I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd. Don't preach to me and lecture me about merit and a meritocracy while I witness you nominate the most unfit, most unqualified people we've ever seen. You're clearly not serious. You cannot lecture me about merit while nominating Pete Hegseth and Robert Kennedy. Cannot. So here's the thing. I want America to win. I love this country. I do. I wanted to win. I love this country the same way you love your family. All families have a complicated story. And that story is always more complicated than the one we tell ourselves at the family reunion. The American family story is complicated, and I know and I carry in my veins the brutal side of that. But I want America to win. My daddy had to give up his seat while wearing his soldier's uniform. Fighting for America, had to give up his bus seat. He had to give up his bus seat, but because we kept fighting for America, his son sits in a Senate seat. So I love America, but so we can't allow people to distract us with all of this nonsense. And by the way, I don't care what you call it. Do away with something you want to call DEI. I don't care what you call it. I just want every child to have a chance. Kids who are growing up in public housing, kids who are growing up in Appalachia, kids who are growing up in rural Georgia, kids who are growing up, in concrete cities. Because that's the only way we're going to win, is if all of our children have a chance. That's the only way we're going to be able to defend American interests amidst the geopolitical adversaries we have, like China, the only way we're going to win is we're going to have to be able to tap into the talent that we have on all sides of the track. Recently, I met this kid at the DeKalb Peachtree Airport. I call him a kid. He wasn't a kid. He was a young adult. He wanted to be a pilot. And he had the aptitude. He was already on his way. In fact, he was there training some others who weren't as far along as he was. His name was Ezekiel. That was his name, Ezekiel. And 10 years later, and $100,000 out of his own pocket between working and going back to school, working and going back to school, trying to make it. He had spent 10 years, $100,000. He still hadn't become a pilot, not because he didn't have the aptitude, but because we made the path too difficult. I don't mean in terms of rigor, I'm saying opportunity and possibility. And I think about Ezekiel all the time because he had that fire in your eyes that you want to see in the eyes of a young person when they have found that thing they want to do, when they found their purpose, the reason they were born. Howard Thurman said, "Ask not what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is people who've come alive." And being a pilot made him come alive, and yet we hadn't made it, we hadn't paved the way smooth enough for him to make it. Not just for him, but for us. Because we have, guess what? A pilot shortage. And there are plenty of jobs in the aviation space, but we're not tapping into the talent of our young people on all sides of the track from every area code, which is why it was sheer foolishness, and I was deeply offended when there were bodies still in the chilly waters of the Potomac, and the president had the nerve to say, even without an investigation, that DEI put that plane in the Potomac. Are you kidding me? We'll have to wait on the investigation, but I'll tell you what did not put that plane in the Potomac is DEI. 96% of the pilots are white. So I want all of our children, I do mean all of our children, there are poor white children in our state who are stuck. They live in rural communities, and we want to expand Medicaid in this state, and so their hospital closed, and the whole ecosystem is going down. And now they want to get rid of Head Start. I'm a Head Start alum. I know it works. It gets kids excited about reading and about learning. So I don't care what you call it. Y'all, we have to stand together. Don't give in to the demagogues. People who have no vision, traffic in division. They don't know how to lead us, so they're trying to divide us. And we have to stand together, red, yellow, brown, black, and white, rich and poor, Democrat and Republican, and say we are one American family. I'm serious. We got to do that because the future of our democracy depends on it.
Good afternoon, Senator. First of all, I want to thank you for coming. I am the son of a naturalized Ethiopian immigrant and an Adolf. By Adolf, I mean African descendant of former slaves. And my parents taught me, while being respectful to power, to speak truth, to not simply exist, but when I've lived, there will be evidence that I was here. And I voted to put you in office. You represent my voice. And I have to ask you about the way we spend our money. My voice is against using our money to fund what many people would consider a genocide. So, the American people seem to be against continually arming Israel as we watch them bomb Palestinians off the planet. As the descendant of an African man and a former slave, you know, we watched this happen to us. We've seen this happen in different countries. I have to ask you, what side of the fence are you on? Where's your voice as it relates to stopping the continual arming of Israel? We've seen Palestinian children being blasted, and not only that, even with a ceasefire, we see more and more approvals of arms being sent over and over again. So Israel is relentless. And so I have to ask you, what are you doing? Where are you on this? You know, what specifically are you saying?
Thank you so much. So, I believe in the humanity of all of God's children, and that you have to center the concerns of the most marginalized. And that's why I was one of the first in the Senate to call for a ceasefire. In addition to that, I pressed the Biden administration. I pushed the Netanyahu administration around the ways in which humanitarian aid was not even getting into Gaza. I voted to give $10 billion in humanitarian aid to Gaza. My North Star in this whole conflict is a world that embraces the children on both sides of this conflict. Because here's the thing that mortal enemies have in common. We all want our children to be okay. Now, we all do. And I said this on the floor of the Senate when I called for the ceasefire at a time when folks felt like you couldn't even say that word. I often wondered as a preacher and as a seminary student, what did the book of Isaiah mean? What did the prophet mean when he said the lion will lie down next to the lamb, and the little child shall lead them? And it was really in the context of this awful, awful conflict. The brutal and awful attack on October 6th, the taking of hostages, the sweeping bombing that killed way too many civilians, way too many children. We could go on and talk about this same conflict. So,
all right, thank you.
So hold on.
Thank you.
So,
all right, let's continue. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and continue. Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and continue. Thank you. We're going to continue with the program.
Do you want me to answer the question?
Thank you. Let us just finish.
I will answer the question, but I'm not going to shout. No, sister, I respect you. Listen, I respect you and I will answer your question, but I'm not going to shout.
Let's continue to be respectful of each other. Let's continue to be respectful of each other. Thank you. Let's continue to be respectful of each other.
So I think listen. I have to tell you,
we would like to continue on with the program. We have a lot of questions to cover today, so please let us be respectful of each other. Senator Warnock, please go ahead. You on with the program.
So I'm listen, ma'am. I'm not gonna shout over you. I will respond to your question. But listen, I have to tell you. Listen, I have to tell you. We have to decide, as somebody who is an activist myself and who comes from the activist community. You can come and, and express yourself. This is a very passionate issue. Or we can have a conversation, but we can't do both of those things. I mean, we can do one or the other. So, I acknowledge that maybe you would rather just make your point. And so I take it that that's what you want to do, make your point. But if you want to have a conversation, not just today, but in the days ahead, I'm happy to have that conversation with you. And I also think that as incredibly important as this issue is, and it's a matter of life and death. It is. There are other issues here, and these folks deserve to be heard as well.
Okay.
All right.
So what we'll do, thank you so much.
I asked you the question, and I guess I have my answer, that you really want to make your point.
So what we'll do at this time, we have staff right here, right now, ready to sit down and speak with you all. Salik, B, raise your hands. We can go in the other room and go ahead and meet with them. Salik and B, raise your hands. They're here right now to speak with you, so we can continue with the program. Let's be fair to others. Let's be fair to others.
Thank you.
Let's be fair to others. Let's be fair.
What was that? Okay. Yeah. All right. Next question.
All right. Susie, please go ahead.
Good. Senator Raphael Warnock, over here. And this side.
Yeah.
Out of the mouths of babe. I'm here with my kids. And it's a lot going on. As a 80s baby, everything was stopping me from coming here today. I'm by the way of the Virgin Islands, and I've been in Georgia to be considered a peach for a minute. You know my people, I know that. You visited there recently. And I had to shift my question around. So let me say that Georgia was a state in the movement of civil rights. And I would champion everyone, as me probably being the youngest person that's probably been on this mic so far, to all let us come together and fight for the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia, for the rights of those that have been put out when it comes to tariffs. I've seen the effect of every question that has been answered because I work in a hospital. I've taken care of those with mental illness. I have done a lot. I have also been a witness to the homelessness, to it being presented to me with a number of issues when it comes to what I can do as a person that's experiencing it. I think that we, as Georgians or people in the city of Atlanta, there's nothing that you have seen is what actually is going on. I speak from the heart of it, from the root of it. There was a video that was...
Ma'am, I want to hear your question.
So the question is, what can we do to come together as a people when it comes to business, those who suffer with homelessness, those that's under the bridge situation, what are we doing with that? Because from my assessment, from 2021, the situation with homelessness is 3 times worse. They're hanging out on the MARTA, we are being harassed, and we try to help them, and MARTA only could do so much. And so the thing is, what are we doing as a people? What can we do, Senator, as community, as business people, to do what we can do to help with you to get things going?
Thank you all so very much for that question. So we are seeing a real problem with homelessness in our country and in our state and in our city. My church sits right in the heart of the city. And not long ago, we saw a very tragic situation with a homeless brother not far from our church. I won't get into the details about what happened and what's the chronology of what happened. I'll let others figure that out. But I do know that this man lost his life while living in a tent. I preached his eulogy because he was, first of all, a child of God, and second of all, he was not unfamiliar with my church community. My staff and others knew him. They'd related to him. And he lost his life. Again, I'm not going to speculate about the details. Others do that work. But we're talking about the fact that there are just way too many people who are vulnerable, who are living on the edge. And I'm afraid that if we don't stand up, we're going to see more of that in our country. As costs rise, opportunity is slashed. And so I take very seriously my job and my responsibility to address these issues. And I'm here as a member of the Senate to support our city in all the ways that I can to address these issues, including homelessness. And where, in the places where I can shake loose federal resources to strengthen that effort, both for our city agencies and our not-for-profit entities, know that I'm prepared to do that. And happy to convene not-for-profit leaders in this city. If you want to meet with my office and talk about what are the potential resources and things that we can do in addition to the things that we're already doing, please know that I'm ready to have that conversation.
Next 5 numbers, 255, 6975, 335, 1433. Again, 255, 6975, 335, 1433. Andrea?
Good evening, Senator
Yes.
Warnock. I'm glad you're speaking on behalf of bringing the nonprofits together. As you know, there were funds that were in the last appropriations for nonprofits to do work in community. Our organization was given an award to provide a women's business center for the state of Georgia. That was back in November. Those funds are still being held up, as are funds with a lot of nonprofits from the previous administration. Is that something that will continue to kind of go back and forth, or is that something we can meet with your constituent services around?
So definitely reach out to us. We are seeing rescissions of funds that have already been appropriated by Congress by this administration. These are illegal actions in many cases. I mean, there's a reason why you go through the appropriations process. You know, I used to watch this little thing as a kid on Saturday mornings, Schoolhouse Rock. Called I'm Just a Bill. Sitting on Capitol Hill. I wish some of my colleagues would just sit and watch that little cartoon. We had an appropriations process. It had to pass both houses of Congress. After going through committees, a president signed it into law. Elections do have consequences, but the last election is not the only election. You don't get to go back and undo everything you don't like. And why would Congress just allow that to happen? So these things are being challenged in court in real time. And I know it's frustrating. I know it. Because sometimes you don't have time. In some instances, entities are closed and small businesses are shut down while you're in the fight. So I'm not saying that lightly. I get it. But many of these efforts are being challenged in court. We're pushing back hard. And if you know, or if you have an entity or an agency that has experienced these rescissions, yes, reach out to me, because just as I told you, there was a situation with Manna that's right here in Georgia, provides the therapeutic food that I told you about for hungry children, not hungry children, children who are acutely malnourished, critical acute malnourishment. They were on the other side of the games that politicians play. And so I got on the phone with Secretary Rubio and literally went line by line and said, can you do something about this? I need you to do something about this. I need you to do something about this. And we were able to get some results out of that. I also had my staff reach out and fight for Second Harvest, which is another entity here in Georgia that provides food for people who are food insecure right here in our country and in our state. And we were able to get the $2 million contract that seemed to be frozen for Second Harvest. So you gave me some tools that I didn't have before becoming a senator, and I intend to use all of those tools. They announced on the Doge website that they were closing 5 Social Security offices in Georgia. I called them out on it. They rolled it back and acted like they didn't say it. That's fine, they didn't say it. Just leave those offices open. They fired thousands of CDC workers. I made noise about it. I got hundreds of them rehired. Not everybody, but I got hundreds of them rehired. And I will continue to fight. And if you have a grant, we'll see what we can do to help.
Hello, Senator Warnock. Thank you for being here today. My name is Cheryl Weldon. Like you, I'm more concerned about the American people than any particular party. In fact, I never even voted blue until 2016, and I'm glad I made the switch.
So am I.
But having said that, my question is, what can you and the Democratic leadership do to solidify your response to what's happening with the Trump administration? I feel like there's a little bit of a void in party leadership, and there's a lot of fragmented response to what's happening. And I feel like we need to have a stronger, more united response.
I think that's a fair critique. People want to hear our voices. And I'm going to keep raising mine. And sometimes your voice is the only thing you got. I stood on the floor of the Senate. I didn't do 25 hours like my good friend and colleague Cory Booker. Rev, the Lord asked him to do that, 25 hours. That was his assignment. But I did stand on the floor for about an hour just talking about Robert Kennedy alone and why he shouldn't be Secretary of Health and Human Services. Because I had met with him in my office, and I knew it was dangerous for him to be in that position. I already knew he was a vaccine skeptic. Children shouldn't be dying in large numbers from measles. So sometimes your voice, that's the point I was making. Sometimes your voice is all you've got. But as a preacher, I know that your voice makes a difference. So raise your voice. I'm going to raise mine. I need you to raise yours. Let me tell you this. So we're in Atlanta. And one of the wonderful things about Atlanta is you get to walk around and rub shoulders with giants, and you act like that's just ordinary. We don't know how lucky we are that we live in Atlanta. Now, they're quickly passing away But you know, I've been at Ebenezer Church now and back in this city. I'm from Georgia, from Savannah, but I've been back in Atlanta pastoring Ebenezer for 20 years. And we walk around and we rub shoulders with the likes of the late, great John Lewis and Joe Lowry and Evelyn Lowry and the great Andy Young, who's still with us. Ambassador Young told me this story that I've been thinking about a lot lately in these times. He said that after the Civil Rights Bill was passed into law, and we got the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Martin Luther King Jr. went to see President Johnson. And he said to President Johnson, we need a voting rights bill. We need voting rights passed into law. And LBJ said, I get it. I don't disagree with you. I understand why you're making the argument. He said, but I don't have the power. He said, Martin, you don't understand. I just used all of my political capital, or a whole lot of it, to muster that civil rights bill into law. I had to get, you know what I had to go through just to get that done? I just got that done. And so I hear you, but I don't have the power in various ways. The president kept saying, I just don't have the power to do it. So they left the meeting, and the staff was feeling all demoralized and dejected. And Andy and others began to say to Dr. King, what are we going to do, Doc? The president said he doesn't have the power. Dr. King straightened his back and said, well, if the president doesn't have the power, I guess we're going to have to get the president some power. I love that story, especially in these times. He said he might be the leader of the free world, but he doesn't have all the power. And if he doesn't have power, we're going to go and get him some. And so that's what Selma was. That's what crossing that Edmund Pettus Bridge was about. That's what John Lewis was doing. He was giving the President of the United States some power. So I'm saying to you that, yes, you have every right to push me and ask me, what are you doing? And we expect you to stand up and use your voice, and I will. But here's what I need you to do. I need you to create the context for the change that you want to see in the world. You gotta use your voice. So that's why, you know, I say to my sisters and brothers, even who stood up a little while ago and made, you know, their show and demonstrated their passion, I ain't mad at you, you know, because voice is important. And I just wanted us to have a conversation and actually hear one another. But these are tough times. You cannot outsource democracy. I'm going to stand up for you in the suites, but I do need you to make some noise in the streets. I need you to call your local representatives and hold everybody accountable. All right?
Okay. Hi.
Go ahead, Brenda.
I would like to talk, if that's okay.
You can go ahead and ask a question. Yeah. Sir, you are out of order.
I would like to exercise my civil duty and ask this question, please. Sir?
Go ahead.
I'm Britt Marshall. I'm a primary care doctor here in Atlanta, and I care very much about my patient population. I take care of a diverse population, from CDC workers to people living here in Southwest Atlanta. Every day, there are people that are talking about the cost of healthcare and the continual rise of it. I'm really worried about what the conversations are happening behind closed doors between your Republican colleagues. And I would like to know more about what they're saying about stopping or stopping the erosion of the privatization of healthcare in Medicaid and Medicare.
Excuse me, sir. Yeah. Turn.
Where's my mic? All right, thank you. Check. Thank you so much. Thank you. Listen, sir, I have heard you and I hear you. Ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't hear your question.
I even wrote it down and everything.
And
I can say it again.
I want to hear your question.
Hi, I'm Britt Marshall. I'm a primary care doctor in Atlanta. I take care of a diverse patient population, CDC workers, people living here in Southwest Atlanta. Every day, people talk about the cost of healthcare and the continued rise of it. I wanted to know what's happening behind closed doors with your Republican colleagues on what the conversation is about stopping the erosion of the privatization of healthcare in Medicaid and Medicare. Healthcare is a right that we all deserve, and I want my taxpayer dollars to go to the people and not to private insurance companies. Thank you very much.
So, thank you so very much for that question. I don't know if there's any issue that I work on more than health care. I agree with you, health care is a human right. And it is certainly something the wealthiest nation on the planet can provide to its citizens. People are without health care not because of a poverty of resources, but a poverty of moral imagination and moral courage. And so right now, you know, I came to this work in a way, I'm standing here as a senator because of my work on health care. Long before I got elected to the Senate, when the Affordable Care Act was passed, I was fighting for Medicaid expansion in Georgia from my pulpit. I was preaching about it and arguing for it and pushing for it. So when I got to the Senate, after being arrested fighting for health care, I made sure that I remained focused on this issue. Right now, Georgia is one of only 10 states that's still refusing to expand Medicaid, and I keep looking for another word because I fear that when we say expand Medicaid, people think we're talking about new money and a new program. What we mean, we really should just say, I don't know, endorse it, accept it. Because you do realize you're paying for it, right? I mean, think about that. You're paying for it, but not getting it. Just because you live in a non-expansion state, your taxes don't go down because they won't give it to you. As a federal taxpayer, you're subsidizing health care in the states that have expanded Medicaid. So your state leaders are literally between you and the health care that you paid for. I don't know about you, but that makes me mad. So I continue to fight for this in Georgia. In fact, when we passed the American Rescue Plan, I fought for a provision that I had to kind of elbow and work with my Democratic colleagues to get, because they're like, well, our state expanded. And that was to get additional incentives for states like Georgia to expand. So I got, I got $2 billion in additional incentives for Georgia to expand. Georgia left over 500,000 people in the Medicaid and the health care coverage gap, because it's mainly the working poor, left them in the gap and left that money on the table. And now they got this little program that, you know, they're trying, but that's not working. So these are the fights that I've been engaged in. But right now, we're in a real fight because they have a trifecta. And there's something coming up called a reconciliation bill. We're in the process. I always find it sadly amusing that we call it reconciliation, because a reconciliation bill is about anything but reconciliation. It's a party line bill. We used ours to pass the American Rescue Plan, which included the expanded child tax credit. We used ours to pass the Inflation Reduction Act, which had my bill, which capped the cost of insulin for seniors to no more than $35 per month of out-of-pocket costs. And my other bill, which capped the cost of prescription drugs for seniors to $2,000 a year. That's how we use our reconciliation bill. They're using theirs to give billionaires a tax cut. They want to cut $800 billion out of Medicaid. And they're trying to convince you that that's waste. There's not that, you cannot find $800 billion worth of cuts without cutting people's coverage. And so that's why when they were doing the budget resolution around this, and sorry to take you through all the sausage making of legislation, but when they were passing the budget resolution on this, I stood up and offered an amendment and said, all right, will the Senate agree that at the end of this process, nobody who has Medicaid coverage, their coverage will not be cut? If you agree with me and you're saying it's not going to happen, if that's true, then vote up my amendment to affirm what you're claiming. Guess what? They didn't vote for my amendment because they know the math doesn't work. So that's the fight that we're in. I want you to see the clear contrast. They want to cut your health care. I want to make sure we protect your health care. They want to give tax cuts to billionaires. I want to give tax cuts to families with children, the child tax credit, and ensure that people have health care, that seniors have access, that they don't have to decide between buying groceries and buying prescription medicine. And that's the work that you have my promise that I will continue to do in the fight that I will continue to wage.
Hi, Senator Warnock. My name is Nia Capitanova from Douglasville, and I just want to thank you for doing this town hall today. As someone who was very honored to send in a mail-in ballot from overseas to make sure that you could beat out Herschel Walker, as we unfortunately remember that he was up against you, and before that. I want to take a moment and just thank everyone else here who has asked the really hard questions over many topics that this disastrous administration is doing, which lets me introduce a new topic. Senator, I am really concerned about climate change. It is undeniable that it exists, and it is an atrocity that so many Republicans think that it is just made up and that it's a conspiracy theory or whatever else comes out of their mouths. So my question to you is, what are you doing to help convince or talk to your Republican colleagues of keeping the EPA in terms of protecting our environment, protecting our water, just protecting the planet that we live on, and going hand in hand with protecting our national parks for us, the American people. Because it is ours. It is not for Elon Musk to come in and dismantle who did not grow up going to them. It is not for the Republicans to be getting their money from them. So what are you doing to help keep this planet a safe place for us and all of our future generations?
Thank you so much. Thank you for the question. There's nothing more important for us to be working on. Now, we have to work on a whole range of other issues. The reason why I fight, for example, for democracy is this the framework in which we get to fight for everything else, including climate change. So I remain focused on this. And I can talk about a whole range of things, but in the interest of time, let me say that I am fighting for us to keep the investments, the historic investments that we made in the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA. That is the single largest investment in clean energy and clean energy jobs in America, in world history. In world history. And we're talking about solar power, we're talking about battery technology, we're talking about the future. And the IRA mitigates this foolish argument between the ecology and the economy. Do not allow the demagogues to convince you that we have to decide between the economy and ecology. They are inextricably linked. The future is clean. And the IRA is a piece of legislation that I'm proud of that we passed. And Georgia benefits from it more than any other state. Investments in battery technology, electric car technology. Where is the largest manufacturer of domestic solar panels in the Western Hemisphere that is now being bolstered and supported by the IRA? Little Dalton, Georgia, known as the carpet capital, is a beast with respect to solar energy future. And so right now, because they want to give tax cuts to billionaires, guess where else they're going trying to get some money? They're trying to strip provisions out of the IRA. So I need you to call your congressional representatives, call your friends in red districts, tell them to call theirs, particularly in Georgia, but all across our country. Because if they take these provisions away, not only do we endanger the environment, which I'm worried about as the father of an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, we could lose up to 46,000 jobs in Georgia, $28 billion in investments. And for every $1 that we've spent with this in federal funds, it's attracted another $4.50 in private funds and support. So fight for the climate, fight for the future, fight for clean energy jobs. Know that I'm continuing to do the same on the inside, but there is bipartisan support right now. There is bipartisan understanding. I mean, talk to some of the members of the congressional delegation. I started to name some, but I'm going to leave it like that. But there's some people that, you know, like to be on Twitter. Talk to them about the jobs in their district. They don't want to, I don't think they want those IRA investments to go away because it's helping people. And here's the irony, probably more people in red districts than blue districts. So I think we've got to help people to see the ways in which when we talk about clean, when we talk about the environment, we're also talking about jobs. Not taking away jobs, but creating jobs. That's where the future is. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are at 2 hours from the time the senator started speaking, which was way more time than the church allowed us. Thank you, Dr. Parker.
If I kept the members of Ebenezer in church this long. No, go ahead.
Yes. So we're going to ask one more question, and out of respect, you were in line. So please go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thank you, Senator, for being here. My name is Darlene Collins. I am a healthcare cybersecurity practitioner, as well as a registered nurse. And of course, I don't know if you guys know, but my job is to take care of your health record, your medical record. I support that. I'm in the trenches working with security. Thank you. My concern is right now, Georgia is 11th overall in the country for cyber attacks. Also, the fact that most of these attacks, when they happen with healthcare and ransom attacks, they're actually causing problems for patients because they're in the middle of procedures, different things happening, people have to get diverted to a different facility. It's almost like lights out and can be pretty detrimental for, from a patient standpoint. Also, identity theft. 70% of the country, most of is elderly people who are dealing with fraud and identity theft and cyber threats. Also, the fact of financial, and then 95% of cyber attacks are due to human error or people not being aware. Also, the fact that internally, most companies, cyber threats are internal as well as external. So my question to you is what are we doing about businesses and healthcare people taking responsibility when it comes to cyber awareness? If 95% of attacks or issues are from not having cyber awareness training or cyber awareness period, what can we do for the state of Georgia to help combat that, as well as are there any incentives to help companies to start providing that training for their employees?
We saw a major attack on Colonial gas line a few years ago, a company with equities here in Georgia. We've seen this in many other instances. We had an attack on our own city of Atlanta. And I think this is something that government's got to work really hard to catch up on. Part of the challenge is the responsibility around addressing this is happening in multiple agencies. And we've got to figure out a way to streamline and organize this in a way that's ready for the task that's in front of us. So that's a conversation that I'm having with my colleagues, and I appreciate you for raising that issue. Thank you so much.